All right, what's up? Today we're going to talk about intended viewing distance. What is intended viewing distance? Well, if you break down the words, you could probably figure it out. It's the distance at which the graphic or sign or whatever is intended to be viewed at the most. So, for example, the intended viewing distance for a brochure is about 18 inches, maybe a foot, right in front of your face, being held in your hand. The intended viewing distance for a billboard, that would be 100 feet. It's way up in the air, down the block a little bit. So intended viewing distance is really critical when you are designing anything that's intended to communicate. For example, you could go as small as a icon, like an app icon on your phone. The intended viewing distance, once again, it's like a foot, the distance from your hand to your face. What are you trying to convey on that icon? You can't say much. The intended viewing distance and the size of the icon means you can't really put much there. The same thing also holds true for signage. People don't realize this, but it's important and you have to know about it. For example, if you have let's say a van, a big white van, and you are a plumber and you want to put your logo on it, right? Well, sure, up close, standing still, you can put the Constitution up there. You could put a couple chapters of the Bible up there if you wanted, and people could read it. But the intended viewing distance for that is, again, 50 feet away, several cars away, 100 feet away. Nobody can read the Constitution up there. Nobody can read all those little words. So the intended viewing distance for a vehicle, for example, means that when I'm looking at your van, anything more than a logo, I can't read. There's another dimension that we have to talk about as well, and that is, let's call it dwell time. They call it dwell time on social media, but it's basically the length of time that the message is seen. Again, for an example, the dwell time for a brochure on a truck at a car dealership is long. It could be an hour. You're sitting there, you're just looking at the brochure in your hand, back and forth, reading it thoroughly. Every bit of print, every photograph, plenty of time. The distance is only a foot away. Well, what's the duration on a van moving down the freeway? 1001, 1002, 1003. There you go. You got 2 or 3 seconds. So who can read all of those words and make sense of them in 2 or 3 seconds? At what distance? So here's the thing. When you are designing signage, you really have to consider the intended viewing distance. Where is the person that is reading your sign standing or sitting on average? If you are running like a shop or a dispensary, for example, and you have the jars behind the register, well, you've got 4 feet at least, 5 feet, maybe 6, 7, 8 feet of distance now from the customer. The customer can't read all of the stuff on those labels. So in order to prevent yourself from having moved the jar back and forth all day long, you've got to put larger labels on the jars. Or better yet, put a rotating section of labels up on a big screen that everybody can see clearly from across the room that lets them read things for 6 seconds at a time or 10 seconds at a time before it changes slides, and have it cover most of the products behind the shelves. So again, and when you're looking at vehicle lettering, just put the brand on there and a phone number maybe on the back, because legitimately people are stopped behind you, right? Like at stoplights, that's more than 3 seconds. That's 10 seconds. It could be a whole minute, whatever it is. Stopped at a train, just stuck in traffic. Have something memorable, but you don't need every service you provide. You don't need a bullet list 5 deep of everything that you provide. Here's the problem with that. If you list 5 things, but don't list the 6th thing, you've shot yourself in the foot. You're implying that you don't do the 6th thing that I'm thinking of. And you can't just add the bullet point that says, and much more, because that's stupid. That means you just didn't really think about it. In fact, you could have backed up and left all of the bullet points off and made your logo 50% bigger. The whole point of a sign like that on a vehicle in public is brand awareness. It's not informational. Imagine if someone handed you a flyer with just the logo. That would be corny because a brochure is meant to have lots of information. It would be a waste to just put a logo. Conversely, if you have a van or a billboard that's meant to be seen for 2 or 3 seconds at 100 or 200 feet away, it's a waste of space, a waste of time to put anything really more than a giant phone number and a huge logo. What logo do you want people to know about? What's the name of the product? Keep the words as few as possible. Put your .com up there. And no, don't put the www. We haven't used that for like 15 years. It takes up so much space. Just put your .com up there. Make sure your .com is as small as short as possible, as few as characters as necessary, and then make that huge with your logo. That's easy for people to remember. Otherwise, you're effectively putting like a Chinese food menu up in the air 200 feet away for people to glance by as they're going by the freeway. People won't even know what that is. What is that? What did I just drive by? They're not going to look at it. And imagine every little word, every section of bullet points that you put up on your available space is shrinking your brand. It's shrinking the logo. Don't do that.